Welcome to the Page One Podcast, a podcast featuring a variety of guests and thought leaders on topics ranging from digital marketing, sales channel strategies, influencer marketing, best-in-class product launches, and all the details about how to accelerate sales. Now, here's your host, Luke Peters.
Thanks for joining us on the Page One Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of Newer Appliances and Retail Band Digital Strategy Agency. This episode is sponsored by Retail Band, where we can give business owners a blueprint on how to grow their digital sales, either direct to consumer or via channels like Home Depot, Wayfair, Walmart, and many, many others. To learn more, find me on LinkedIn or email me at luke@retailband.com. In this episode, you're going to learn from Justin and Christian Arquilla on how to grow from scratch and launch a digitally native brand for the long run. Justin is an entrepreneur, husband and father of three with a finance background. Prior to starting Gekks and just out there trying to create something that can stand the test of time, Christian has a background in private equity and restructuring consulting. He's a dad of three kids, under 4 years old, and husband to his beautiful wife, Kate, who also has her own baby business named Bumble Baby. Gekks is a growing brand of patented low-profile, no-smell socks. Justin and Christian, welcome to the Page One Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
All right, cool. So anyway, I'm going to ask you guys if you can describe the brand. I took a look at the website and saw what you guys were doing. And I don't think I took your tagline. So I just went with, you guys have a patent on this. They're like antimicrobial socks, and they're low profile. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. So what Gekks are basically a replacement for no-show socks or for going barefoot. So probably the biggest clarifying point is that they actually don't go on your foot. You don't put them on your foot. They go inside your shoe. So it's a thin, breathable no-show sock with an adhesive that is fused on the outside of it. So you put it in your shoe, you apply pressure to the adhesive, and it essentially suctions to the inside of your shoe. Then you slip in and out of that shoe barefoot like you always would if you were wearing high heels or ballet flats or men's boat shoes or loafers. When you're in the shoe, you feel like you're wearing a thin, breathable no-show sock that is knit with antimicrobial odor-killing yarn. So as you're walking around and sweating, all of that basically odor-causing bacteria is being killed, and so you can wear the sock over and over again without having to wash it. So it's basically a souped-up replacement to no-show socks, which many people find are just don't work.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's such a. So, anyways, for the listeners out there, I was excited about what you guys have created because it's a really specific problem you're solving, but yet you're creating an awesome business and a really awesome brand around it. And, I think now, the world is like niche down, keep niching down until you find that audience and that specificity of your product. And you guys have definitely done that, but still big enough, to grow a substantial business. So I think it's going to be a great story. Looking forward to it. And Christian, why don't you talk about, working with your brother? How do you guys make it work? What roles, do each of you guys take on?
Sure. So I would say we both, obviously with a startup and a small business, we both have multiple responsibilities, but I would say I take on more of the sales and marketing role, whereas Justin takes on more of the operating side of the business right now. But obviously with a small team, it's there's a lot of stuff going on and ping-ponging back and forth every single day on different things.
Yeah. And Christian, how many team members at the company? How big are you guys?
Right now, including both of us, we have about 5 or 6 salaried employees and about 14 to 16 hourly employees, depending on the season.
Okay, awesome. And Justin, let me ask you a few more questions about the company. And this is, just to give the audience a little bit of scale. Are you guys handling your own fulfillment? If so, how large is the warehouse, or do you guys work with a 3PL?
We currently do all of our own fulfillment, and we've actually done all of our own fulfillment since day one. We bid fulfillment out maybe 5 times over the last 4 or 5 years with different groups and looked at it. And it's an interesting business when you look at how fulfillment works with low weight, small products like ours. And I think the reason I bring that up is what we've just basically found is you can save a lot of money with a low weight, small item like ours where you don't need a big warehouse. You can do your own fulfillment. And in our particular case, save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing our own fulfillment. And there's so much, the software advances have come so far where, you can get a ShipStation account and integrate it with Shopify and, within a day or two, learn how to use it and really be your own fulfiller and do, like we do where we're fulfilling 500-600 orders a day on our own or, with the team we have here with really no major background in fulfillment.
I'll also chime in there because something that we're pretty proud of on our end is we have about a 0.5% error rate in shipping those orders out compared to the industry average in fulfillment warehouses of about 2 to 3%.
2 to 3%. Wow, that's awful. We do the fulfillment ourselves as well. I always assumed smaller products like yours would be a lot easier to just use a 3PL. And with newer, our products are pretty big and heavy. But you bring up a good point. I mean, you're probably at a 3PL or fulfillment place, you're getting charged, a standard pick and pack fee. And then if you guys are selling multiple pieces, they're probably adding additional fees per each piece. And you guys can pull these things so quickly. You're basically just saying, hey, you're just way more efficient at 500 units a day. You're just able to do it a lot quicker. And is that mainly where the savings is like on the pick and pack and the additional fees, or do you even find savings elsewhere?
I think that's where it is on the pick and pack. When you just think about, right, like we can keep 30,000 pairs of Gekks in 500 square feet, right? And the way we actually have it built out with the team, it's about 500 square feet, and it's in all of the SKUs are around the border, and so someone's not walking around a warehouse with every pick. It's just back and forth within 500 square feet, or maybe it's a little bigger than if you measured it. But I think that's really where the savings is. All of the fulfillment houses that we've gone to try and offload the fulfillment to, you always just seems like you're paying whatever it ends up being, 85 cents or $1 or $1.20 a pick, plus 15 cents every extra SKU. And most of our customers are ordering 4 pairs. So it was always in the $1 to $1.50 range. And like I said, we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by doing it ourselves and managing our own team.
Super interesting. Most people don't have the luxury to be able to fit that in that tight of a space, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You talked about Shopify, so I'm assuming you guys are using Shopify. Are you using any other type of ERP, or like how are you handling the financial side of the business? What's tying into Shopify on that end?
So I would say that the major systems that we use are, Shopify is collecting orders. All of those orders are being pushed through to ShipStation, which also, kind of connected with Zendesk on our customer service side. And then on the financial side, all that Shopify data, ultimately we can get pushed through, and all the banking data to QuickBooks. So it's a pretty easy ERP system for us, really. Shopify Plus is a pretty expensive service, but besides that, most of these systems and services are relatively inexpensive on a monthly basis until you keep scaling. I forgot to mention email and text software too, which is also integrating, with our website as well. So those are the main ERP systems that we're using.
Yeah, it is amazing how inexpensive it is, and QuickBooks online platform is really nice. It took them a while to kind of get to the game, but yeah, they have a good offering there. Talk about channel mix. So you guys are selling direct to consumer, like you said, total you're doing about 500 a day or so. What percentage of your orders are through your website versus on Amazon?
So we are 100% on our own website at this point, and pretty much all of our spend is on paid social, Facebook and Instagram, with about 10 or 15% of that spend going to Google, pretty much for branded search campaigns. So all of our sales are on our website. We haven't even touched Amazon yet at this point.
Wow. And would you mind kind of getting into that? How come you guys haven't touched Amazon? You obviously could set up a third party, control the brand a little bit. What went into that decision process?
Yeah, I think that's right. We do want to control the brand. We want to, have the customer's information, their email, their address, their phone number, so that we can remarket to them appropriately. We did we were on Amazon a long time ago, maybe in 2014 or 2015 for about 1 month. And what we saw was we were pretty much spending on paid social. People were getting to our website and then they were just jumping off to purchase on Amazon. And we were, obviously incurring all of the, the extra 15 or 20% fee on Amazon, and obviously having to abide by their rigorous shipping rules and regulations, which when we were, that small of a company, when we were just starting off, it was pretty tough to get orders out, same day, if not next day. So we're taking a look at it right now. We're thinking about potentially getting back on it. We had talked to a few different third parties that are pretty excited about us trying to get back on there, but we'll see what the future holds with regard to Amazon.
Well, listen, good for you guys. You're living the digital dream by not having to rely on Amazon. So that's actually a huge compliment that you're able to do that. Would you mind sharing what your reorder rate is? I kind of want to get into, CAC and acquiring your customers. How does the reorder rate look, or percentage?
So it's interesting. One of the things that we've been fortunate to be able to do since day one is basically we've always had almost every day positive return on ad spend and really even positive contribution margin. So the CAC has come up over the last 3 or 4 years as we've scaled and as the channel that we focus on with social and Google has gotten more and more competitive. I would say it's come up maybe 20 to 30%, and we've been able to fight that off with website optimization, basically to get our website conversion rate up. The reorder rate sits right around a 2-year cohort, sits right around 20 to 25%, which is something that is low for the industry, which is actually one of the things that has us looking so hard at channel and Amazon and trying to, and brick and mortar as well, because our customer satisfaction scores and net promoter scores and scores like that, they don't match up with the reorder rate. And so we've been studying that very closely over the last 6 to 12 months and trying to understand more and more from our customers why we're essentially missing them when they're buying shoes.
Yeah. Wow. And what I will say though is, listen, for everybody, tuning in and listening to this, you guys are, let's say 20% reorder rate. You're saying, it's low and maybe it is, but the point is you're still able to profitably, you're profitable on that first order, before reorder rate, which is, hard to do. And I think a lot of companies and brands out there think that the only companies that can be successful on, paid ad nowadays are the ones that are, breaking even or losing money, but they got, 50% reorder rate or 70% reorder rate. So you guys are kind of able to solve this problem. So congrats on that. And, to boot with a kind of a lower average order value probably. And you have free shipping on the website? You having to factor that into the cost?
We offer free shipping over $60. So under $60, we charge shipping.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, that just means you guys have built a strong brand. As I'm putting those, I'm sure all that stuff makes sense to you guys because you guys know your numbers. But, for everybody listening is not always a direct consumer expert. A lot of the audience is selling, just through, channels or their omni-channel, and they're in store. And it's probably a testament to how solid you guys are on the branding and, just creating value and call to actions and being able to convert those paid ads. So channel mix, are you literally 100% direct to consumer, or are there any other channels besides Amazon that you're on?
We are 100% direct to consumer on our own website.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that information. And then Christian, why don't you kind of bring us up to speed on how you guys came up with the idea of Gekks? Obviously fast growing brand. It sounds like you guys started around somewhere between 2012, 13 or 14. Would love to hear the quick story on that.
Sure. Well, I'll pass that over to Justin because that's his story to tell.
All right. You got it.
So basically how we came up with this concept was, I was living in Manhattan. Christian was living in Chicago when we started this company. And I was recently married and basically transitioning out of, wearing loafers and boat shoes without socks. And I was coming home and my wife was saying, your feet smell. You have to wear no-show socks. Like you can't, we're going to be living together. You can't come home with feet smelling like that if you're not going to wear socks, shorts and a nice pair of loafers that you come home and your feet smell. So I started using no-show socks and I just found basically all of them to be subpar in one way or another. Either they would slip down or they would not wash well and they wouldn't size right then, or they would show, right? The point of a no-show sock is to not show, and then a lot of them just end up showing depending on how the shoe is cut. So that was really the impetus to start this company. I mean, before I even talked to Christian about it, I think I looked on the internet and on Google for almost a week at night trying to find anything like this out there. And meaning on Google patent, trying to find a patent or a product like this out there. And I couldn't find it. And I called Christian, and we were both working in finance at the time, and decided to go for it. And I guess before I end the story, I will say that from 2015 to 2017, 94% of our revenue was from men. And then in 2000, basically selling this men's loafer sock that would go in your shoe. 2017, because we got so much inbound traffic from email traffic from female customers asking for the product for female shoes, like their high heels or their ballet flats or their slip-ons. We started launching female products in 2017 to the point now we're in 2020, 92% of our revenue is from our female customers. So it's basically completely turned upside down from being an entirely male SKU company to almost an entirely female SKU company. And I would say now we're in when we talk to people about this, I don't actually consider Gekks to be in the hosiery or sock space. I consider it to be more in the footwear space because it's more of something that aligns with and is an accessory to a shoe more than it is a sock that goes on your foot. So we went from the men's boat shoe space to the women's footwear space.
That's all. Well, it makes a lot of sense. They're buying a lot more stuff than us guys are. So
right.
I'm sure the business has done really well. And just thinking about that, you have a trademark, obviously something you guys will figure out on your own, but since Amazon's the wild, wild west, having that relationship there and having, what's that called? Where I forget what the brand partnership is called, where you can kind of, you'll have a little bit more sway on the trademark and design patent or whatever type of patent you end up having. I forget what it's called, but anyways.
I think it's called the brand registry.
Yeah, sorry. The brand registry.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. For what it's worth, it's hard. Amazon's a wild west, but yeah, that's, so you guys you found the need personally, you went to market, you kind of expanded, to men and women. And, for you, Christian, how do you think about brand building? Obviously that's been a big focus. I can tell by looking at the website and just researching you guys. You tell a great kind of family and personal story on the website. Let me ask this in a different way though, Christian, like what are 3 things that you see brands not doing that they could be doing better? Maybe stuff that you guys have found has worked for you.
Sure. So I think from the start, I would say you need to have something, especially in this day and age, you have to have something unique to sell, or a story that is differentiated from your competition. I would say another thing is to try to get personal. And have a personal touch as much as possible, whether that be through, handwritten letter that's sent along with your order, or really great customer service. But I think having a unique product and being able to communicate it online in a visual way where it's super engaging and you get people to engage with the brand. We do that in a certain way on mobile, at least with something called a mobile flow. And stepping back for a second, I think if we would have listened to all the e-commerce experts in the early days, I think we probably wouldn't be in business right now. And I say that because a lot of people told us from the very beginning that we should be sending traffic directly to product pages. And to try to get as low down in the funnel as possible. Whereas we did that for a while, and we looked at the numbers and realized that really people weren't understanding what Gekks were. So we kind of created this whole mobile flow and had people engage with their, stockless style problems, whether they be, sweaty feet or smelly feet or stinky feet, or their no-shows, fell down or couldn't find their no-shows in their sock drawer or whatever that may be. We kind of put that out there when they first visit the website, so that they're kind of interacting with the brand from that standpoint. So we were able to get our website conversion rate up from low 2% up to about 5.5% to 6%, where it sits right now. Just trying to step back and think about what the customer would ideally want, and to really tell that story.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And Justin, why don't we dive more into kind of your paid advertising and getting traffic to the website? I mean, how is, the machine learning on Facebook and Instagram and Google, it's made it, for some companies, impossible to make money. The ROI has generally drifted down over the last couple of years, but you guys are still successful. Kind of walk us through how you found that success and what tweaks you've had to make to your paid ad accounts.
Sure. So it has changed dramatically over just in a short, 3-year period. I would say I was shortly, maybe an hour or so ago before we started talking, looking at our CPM for the ads that are running right now. And our CPMs right now are sitting at about $30, which a CPM is a metric of cost to show 1,000 impressions.
Yep.
It's sitting at $30 right now. And in 2018, I think it was $11. So the ad costs have gone up.
And in 2015, when we started, it was probably $4 or $5, which is crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Right. So it's gotten very competitive, and you have to combat that with, there's really only a few ways to combat those higher CPMs. It's higher click-through rates by basically having a great piece of content or creative that you can put in front of people that can get those 1,000 people that it shows to click, or higher conversion rate on your site, or a combination of all of those things. What we found over the last few years really is that it's making it very challenging right now for a lot of brands. And just jumping back to what you had said about how many people believe right now that the only way to be successful on Facebook, Instagram, or digital consumer, digitally native brand or direct to consumer brand is to have that 50 to 75% reorder rate. And I actually do think that that's becoming the harsh reality, is that unless you have that really high reorder rate, it's very hard to start now. Gekks doesn't have that high of a reorder rate, but we have the benefit of having delivered, hundreds of millions of impressions over the last 5 years. So people are seeing our ads, they're not clicking on them, they're not being tracked, but they're still coming by. But to start now, the cost of being on those platforms, and you have gotten so high that it is very challenging. And I think it's really throwing the retail environment here into kind of throwing everyone for a loop, if you will, because it is, when you start to think about old retail keystone margins of, it's going to sit on a peg for $100 and the store is going to buy it from the brand for $45 to $47, depending on what you're selling, and the brand's going to make it for $25 or $20. So that was the way it was for a long time. And I think what ended up happening was, instead of being on a peg, it was being sold direct to consumer for $100. But Facebook and Instagram, Google were only taking at the beginning, let's just say, 30 of those $100. And I think they kind of realized, we should take what the stores used to take. So they've just raised prices to the point where they're now taking that 50, which, if you're a brand, is, I guess no different than being in a store, except for you have to ship the product to the customer, you have to fulfill it, and you have to pay credit card fees, and those get expensive.
That's such an interesting way you break that down. I actually love that. And hopefully people can maybe rewind and listen if they didn't totally get it. But yeah, it's a great explanation for how things used to be, and sometimes still are in some stores, with the keystone margin, and then how, the Google and Facebook mainly have kind of just become that middle. They've basically sucked up all that middle margin, and honestly, even more sometimes for some brands. I mean, how do you guys? So you kind of alluded a little bit to attribution and how you're thinking of attribution, because not everybody that clicks or you're going to have more buyers than everybody that simply the ones that click on your ads. Are you guys using any specific software to target attribution? And I don't know if you know offhand, does it add another 30% of sales or does it double sales? How big of a boost does your attribution model add to your total paid ad sales?
Sure. I guess I could. The way that we have attacked that has been to not use outside software to track it and really handled that internally. And so the way we've handled it is a post-purchase customer survey that is a branded survey, meaning it looks like it's coming from Gekks. It doesn't look like it's coming from a third party. And it pops up in between the purchase and the confirmation page. Now, customers can still X out of it, but it's nice looking, it's branded, it's scrambled. The question is, how did you hear about us? And there are things on there that we don't even advertise on, right? So like we will put, let's just say, radio on there when we're not running radio, as a way of really checking the data to say, is this worthwhile data? And when we put radio on there when we're not running radio, you get a couple of people tapping it here and there, but generally speaking, it just goes away. And so what we've found over time is that if you scramble those surveys and you think about it from kind of a data science standpoint and you do it in a branded manner, that for us has been the best way to attribute sales.
Yeah. Well,
and I think what's important there is just the aesthetic and the making it very easy for the customer to engage with it, the buttons, and want to engage with it.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. How do you though decipher if it was a Google paid ad or a Google ad, or or like an organic listing on Google? That one must be pretty tough then, because the customers, they usually don't know what they're clicking on, right?
Yeah, that's a little tough, but you can always jump back into the Google account and kind of see, what your metrics look like there, on the back end.
Yeah.
But we use it just to say, was it Facebook? Was it Instagram? Was it Sirius? Was it the mailer? Was it regular radio? And it's been the best way for us to, as we have tested several channels over the last year and a half besides Facebook and Instagram. And we haven't really, I would say, significantly scaled those channels, but we have spent a decent amount of money on some of those channels. And having that framework in place really helped us understand which of those channels we want to keep going on and which of those channels were pretty big. And basically, there was no ROI.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. The reason I ask is because, and so the next question I want to ask, I'll tell you this, and I'll give you time to think about it. It's like, what percentage of your orders are paid versus all other channels, which would be like email, organic, and everything else. But the reason I ask is because, if and I have a question in this later about agencies, but like if you work with an agency, and everybody, and let's say you work with like 3 agencies, one's running affiliate, one's running, I'm just making this up, email, the other one's running both paid, Facebook and Google. And then you add up like what they say with attribution, their sales are going to be like higher than your actual sales. They always like, it's like attribute, like your verifiable paid sales are, let's say 100,000, but we attributed 250,000. And then you do the same thing and then you're like, wait a minute, guys, where did the $1 million go? That's not what the sales were. And so that's why I'm asking about attribution. It's such an animal to know what it is. But anyways, that is an ingenious way that you guys are handling that. But what is your roundabout breakdown of like paid versus non-paid? And I would loop everything basically into the non-paid, like even emailed, even though, there is some acquisition cost to those emails.
I would say that number is probably around 85% of our customers are getting there via, a paid ad from some point in the past, whether it be that day or 30 days before or 60 days before, I would say, because we've done that post-purchase survey, and friends and family and kind of word of mouth has always been around that 10 to 20% range.
Yeah, that's great.
And when you're in just to step back for a second, generally speaking, the past 5 years we've really only done paid social, right? So we know where that has where those impressions are and where those people are coming from, right? 2019 was a little bit different. We did do a few things, and that's when it got a little bit trickier or more tricky. But Again, that post-purchase survey, showed word of mouth and family and friends, which were around 10 or 20% of the overall conversions. So I think that you can extrapolate from there that, maybe, 80 to 85% of our customers are coming from paid.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And, for everybody listening and those who are not, because there's a lot of strong brands that are not direct to consumer yet. And I think everybody should have a direct consumer channel. Everybody should. But that's the challenge. You got to be profitable. Most of the ads are coming in from paid traffic. And unless you got a super high reorder rate, you got to be profitable on, from order one. And you guys have kind of, found out how to do that. Justin, let's talk about agencies. So, look quickly on your site. You got to, some of the leadership is on the website. You talked about the size of the team earlier. I think you said something like 5 or 6, and then salaried, and then about 14, 15 hourly. How do you guys think about using agencies? So, what do you guys do internal, and what do you end up outsourcing?
So right now, we actually do everything internally. We have gone in and out of using agencies over the last few years. And I think what we found is that, there's many great agencies out there. But at the end of the day, if you can build a great team internally, you're going to get a better ROI by having those people internal. And so we have a full-time web developer that can manage the website and also manages all of the, I would say, like the logistical portals between Facebook and Google and all of that. And we have a full-time graphic designer and marketing person that's constantly doing photos and taking photos, doing ads, and doing those sorts of things. And we all work together as a team to decide, what type of content are we going to put out there, where are we going to put it, what's the budget going to be. Agencies have helped with that in the past, but I would say that we haven't found an agency yet to outperform the internal team at such a pace that it makes sense to pay the agencies. And frankly, on a lot of occasions, they underperform the internal team. So if you can't find an agency that can outperform you, then there's really no purpose to it, if you will. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Makes a lot of sense, and it keeps you guys lean.
And I would encourage anyone to think, like I said, agencies can be great. The last one that we worked with, frankly, was great. We really loved working with them. They did a great job for us, communicated very well, super smart. But the performance just wasn't different than what it was before we hired them. So when you have that dynamic there, it's very hard in your smaller, growing brand. It's hard to pay those agency fees if they're not going to outperform.
That makes a lot of sense. And Christian, why don't we just pivot to the supply chain on this one? I'm sure, folks that are listening are wondering maybe, where is the product sourced from? What are the lead times? What are a couple things that you guys have done to, streamline your supply chain?
Well, we have a few different hosiery mills down in North Carolina that we work with and have worked with over the past few years. We have a few different hosiery mills down in North Carolina that we have worked with in the past and are currently working with. They actually supply the socks to us. The socks are shipped to our facility in Chicago, where we actually apply the adhesive ourselves here. I would say the adhesive, right now, we've kind of changed the adhesive over the past 4 or 5 years. And we've used both domestic and international suppliers for the adhesive. Right now, we're using a supplier from China, and they send the adhesive in roll format to another supplier a converter in Ohio, who then converts another film or laminate onto the backside of that adhesive roll and sends cut sheets to us here in Chicago as well. And we in the past, we have outsourced the cutting of the pieces. And keep in mind, we have tons of different SKUs, and each SKU has 3 different size shapes on them for men and women in 3 different sizes. So we have a whole host of different shapes of the adhesive and the cuts of the adhesive. So we decided to bring the cutting of that adhesive internal, and we bought a big dual head laser cutter where we have someone work on that. intermittently throughout the day. So kind of a mix of suppliers across the country and internationally, and we also do some light assembly here.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear that. And totally different than a lot of folks that are just simply buying a finished product elsewhere and bringing it in. You guys have a couple different steps to the supply chain. But it sounds like a lot of it is stateside.
Yeah, I will say that we have tried to outsource this entire process a few different times in the past, and that ended up just being a nightmare. And those people that tried to do it on our behalf ended up being 10, 15, 20,000 units short over a 6 to 8 week long period. So we've tried to do that a few different times in the past, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again in the future. But right now, as it sits, it's just better for us to be in control of our own destiny with that.
Makes sense. Yep. And I can see, you guys know the product and probably you guys were losing units during the adhesive process or something like that. So, just kind of finishing this up, Justin, what are the next big marketing concepts to help retailers grow and kind of what's next for Gekks and the brand?
It's a great question. I think, what's next as far as marketing concepts is really a tough one. I think because in the very short-term environment we're in here, you have many retailers that have been forced to close doors over the last year with the pandemic. And so all of those retailers have to make up sales somewhere, and all those sales are coming direct to consumer. So the direct to consumer world right now is it's a very competitive space. I think some of that competition will subside as the pandemic hopefully ends next year. But I think that the way that we're thinking about this and looking at it is that I think you have a very large subset of brands that are older brands that have been around for 10 or 20 years that are still very heavily brick and mortar. And COVID has essentially forced them to figure out direct to consumer. And now that they're in the game and figuring it out, I don't think very many of them are just going to go away once they can all open their stores up with no restrictions. So I think from that standpoint and all the things we've talked about, how it can be very challenging right now to make money D2C, I think an omni-channel approach is really important for someone that's thinking about, starting today and trying to figure out, you're going to need some direct to consumer. You're going to want to run your own, ads on Facebook and Instagram, but, it might not be a bad thing to offer some SKUs on Amazon as well. If you can have a small multi-SKU brand. So you have some SKUs on Amazon, some things you're driving traffic to your own website on Facebook and Instagram. I think brick and mortar is going to be important over the next 12 to 24 months to figure out how you can deliver impressions brick and mortar. Even if it's not super profitable, it's an impression, and it could be a way to acquire customers, and then they can come back and buy it from direct next time.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you got to be diversified, right? And that's kind of what that message is. And I think it goes both ways, for the companies that are listening that are only selling on marketplaces or in store and not, controlling their destiny on direct consumer, it goes back that direction as well. But yeah, no, that's great. And, I'll give this one to Christian, unless Justin, you got a bigger story, but Christian, what's been your biggest mistake or failure? And then what did you end up learning?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest mistake I feel like we made is probably not swallowing our pride and raising money from the very beginning. And that comes down to just our product. It was a very, very tricky product to not only try to make and try to invent, but also to try to get right, get perfect. And we're still, having customer feedback loops, try to make it, right for every size and feel and for every different shoe type. So I would say one of the bigger mistakes is not, sucking up our pride and trying it from the very beginning and doing it ourselves. We probably should have raised a significant amount of money, not launched as quickly as we did and not scaled as quickly as we did, and tried to, really work on the product and make the product as perfect as we possibly could. Because, getting back to what you said earlier, long-term value is really the most important thing with direct-to-consumer businesses. And, if your product isn't amazing and doesn't have a competitive advantage, people aren't going to come back And so I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned. And if we had to do it all over again, I would say we probably needed a serious amount of cash from the beginning to get the product right.
Yeah, and let's let me ask, if you don't mind, have you guys had to raise capital later on? And if so, why was it a mistake? Because either way, your equity is going to be more valuable later on in the game, right?
That depends. I think we did end up raising money earlier last year from two institutional venture capital firms. But I think that having data, right, can be good and bad, right? Because as soon as you start selling something, right, people are going to be looking at repeat cohorts, especially those guys, to see how many people are coming back and what does that cash flow look like going into the future. That
makes sense. So you're saying, at the beginning, maybe you could have even got a better valuation. It's kind of a
that's exactly right.
In the venture
I don't want to say
world,
that, but
in the venture capital world, you can get a better valuation with no revenue than you can with revenue.
God,
Sounds a little upside down, but it is 100% true.
How come I haven't learned that one yet? But everybody listening, we better all take advantage of this once in our lives before this is over. I have a sense that's going to end soon. That's so funny. Wow, listen, that's a cool note to kind of finish this interview up on. I really enjoyed talking to you guys and getting to know you a little bit. How can listeners find more about you, learn more about Gekks?
Sure, they can find us at our website, which is www.mygekks.com.
Awesome. And we'll have that in the show note. And Gekks is with 2 Ks, guys. So everybody listening, you can go check out the site. It is a really cool idea that definitely solves a need. And I just want to thank everybody who's listened to this episode. Hope you all enjoyed the interview today. I truly appreciate your reviews on iTunes and hope you can join us for the next interview. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Page One podcast with Luke Peters. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us out by leaving us a rating on iTunes. Want to double your online sales? Check out www.retailband.com. And don't forget to join us next week with our next amazing guest.